Opening the scene in Blender, you're probably wondering, well, how the hell do I move around? That's pretty easy. You can use the mouse wheel, if you click it, or the middle mouse button, to look around, just like this. If you want to pan around, you can press Shift and then click the middle mouse button to do this. And of course, you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Now, how do you select objects? To take care of that, you can go to Edit, Preferences, and then Key Map, and then you can use Select with mouse button. You can set it to either left or right. I'm using right because this is the original way Blender does it, and this is the way I taught myself, so I'm not going to change it now. But you can change it to left. So to select an object, either use left or right click depending on the setting that you chose. To select all the objects in a scene, you can press A, and you can double press A to deselect everything. To delete objects, press A to select them, and then X, and then just delete. You can also use your numpad to move around the scene. If you press 1 on your numpad, you will go to front view. If you press 3, you will go to side view. If you press 7, you will go to top view. And you can see that up here in the top left. So as you change, that will change as well. And if you want to leave orthographic view, just use your middle mouse and drag out of it. I need you to remember these shortcuts. These are pretty important. You can write them down or just memorize them, but I do recommend writing them down. Before we get started with the actual modeling, we should probably put in some references, which are very important, especially once the characters get a bit more complex. Now, to help you out with this beginner's tutorial, I have made 2 references that you can use. Go down to the download link and you can get all the project files, including the reference images. To add them, we will go into front view by pressing numpad 1. And if you don't have a numpad, you can go to Edit, Preferences, Input, and then Emulate Numpad. Enable that if you want to use the normal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on keys on your keyboard, which are just above the letters. I am doing that for some reason, although I do have a numpad, but I feel like this one is much easier. Shift A will add an object, and we'll go down to Image and then Reference. Find where you save the files, and let's first add the front image, just like this. And then you can move on to the References tab, Object Data Properties tab. We will change the depth to back so we can see what's in front of it. And we will change the side to front. This makes sure that only one side of the object is rendered and not both of them. And also, what you can do is check this opacity box and just move it down a little bit just so we can see through it. And for the ease of use, what we're going to do is we're going to change the Y offset here, so it's right at the end of our feet, just like that. And again, I'm using Shift and middle mouse to move around it like this. And we will need to set this to a proper scale. So if you press S, you can scale it down to this little 4-part grid right here, which is 2 units in Blender, just like that. Or sorry, that's 1 unit in Blender, but in Unity and Godot and probably most of other engines, this is actually a 2 unit. So this would be a meter by 2 meters character, which is probably what you want most of the time. So we want to scale it to these 4 quadrants here. Once we have that, we can press G and Y to move it backwards. And then we can press Shift D to duplicate an object like this. And once you duplicated it, you can press right click to move it right back. It's still duplicated here. We just move it back to the original position. Then we can press R and Z and then type in 90 on your keyboard to rotate it for 90 degrees around the Y axis, G and Y to move it back to the center, and then G and X to move it there. This will be our side reference. So you can go back to the object data properties here and then select this little folder icon here to load a new image. Again, find where you saved the references, and then we can just select the side reference. So now if we use the 1 and 3 on our numpad, we can actually see our references here. And one more thing before we get started with modeling, is I need to teach you a couple more shortcuts. So in order to control the vertices of an object, and all vertices is just these little points here, which control the shape of the object, or just the object itself, you can use S, R, and G to transform them. S will scale an object, R will rotate an object, and G will grab it or move it. A really cool thing about Blender is that you can use the specified axes to deform in a specific way. So for example, if I press G and Y, it will move it only on the Y axis. G and X will move it on the X axis. G and Z will move it on the Z axis. Same thing for the rotating. So RY rotates around the Y axis, RX rotates around the X axis, and RZ rotates around the Z axis. Same thing for the scale. SY scales on the Y axis, SX scales on the X axis, and SZ scales on the Z axis. Once you have that memorized or written down, we can move on. In order to add an object, you can use Shift A, and then we'll go to Mesh and Cube, because this is our starting point. And now you can enter Edit mode, which allows you to change the vertices, faces, and edges of an object, which you can change the selection mode up here. So the first one is Vertex, the second one is the Edge mode, and then we have the Face mode like this. To enter and exit Edit mode, you can either use Tab or you can change it up here. But before you want to enter the edit mode on an object, you have to select it first and then go into edit mode. Again, you can use A to select everything, or double clicking A will deselect everything. And now using our numpad keys, we can go into front, we can scale it, and then G and Z to move it up to where the head is. Just like that. But you can see that this is a block and this is a sphere. Well, how are we going to do this? Pretty simple actually. You can go to the modifier tab, which is this little wrench key, and you can add a subdivision surface modifier. And you can see this will smooth it out and subdivide it as well. And you can also change the levels in the viewport here to get more detail. I'll be sticking to 2 for now. So back in edit mode, you can now scale the head so it fits the size of the reference. And if you have a hard time seeing it, you can use Z to go into wireframe mode. So Z and left, dragging to the left will go into wireframe, and Z and dragging to the right will go back to solid, which is what we use most of the time. So if you go into wireframe, you can better see the reference behind it, and then just scale it to whatever it is. And then move back to solid. Great, now we've got a head. Let's add the body. So in edit mode, I'm gonna add a cube again. And the reason we do this in edit mode, if we did it in object mode and added a cube, you can see that they are now 2 separate objects, and we want them all to be together. So we're gonna go into edit mode, and now once we add it, it will just be one object. With this newly added cube, I'm gonna press S to scale it, G and Z to move it up to where the body should be, and now again we can use the reference image to kind of place where it is by going into wireframe. And to get this little nice cone shape, we can use Ctrl R to add loop cuts. This is a way of adding more geometry. So if you press Ctrl R and drag around the object, you can see where the detail will be added. And using the scroll wheel, you can change the amount of loop cuts that will be added. I'll just be adding 1, and then we'll just move it down and left click to place it right there. Next, we'll be adding the legs and the arms. So now in object mode, deselect everything, press Shift A and add another cube. In edit mode, press S to scale, G and X to move it to the side, and G and Z to move it up. But of course now we only have one leg, and to get both sides looking the same, we can go to the modifiers tab again and add a mirror modifier, which as you can see will mirror everything we do on this side to the opposite side. We will also be adding another subdivision surface with levels viewport set to 2, so we can get some detail. And now just match it with the legs. I'm gonna press SZ to move it up. In wireframe mode, I'm gonna now select just these bottom vertices, which you can do with C. C will enable the circle select tool, just like this, and you can change the radius with your mouse wheel. If you hold Shift, it will deselect. So left click will select, and Shift left click will deselect. And if you want to exit it, just right click and it will go back. So I'm going to select these bottom vertices with C, and I'm going to place them right where the floor is, right here on the green one or the red one if you're in the front view. To add this little foot, I'm going to add another loop cut using Ctrl R and just drag it down to where you think the foot should be. Now I'm going to select this front face. You can do it in vertex select mode. You can do it in edge select mode like this by holding Shift, or in face select mode, just select that face. So select and Shift will select more of them, but we're just going to use the face mode. Press E to extrude, and then just set the length of the foot to something small like this, so it looks nice and cute. But you can see it still doesn't match our view here. So what I'm going to do is press Ctrl R to add another loop cut so we can sharpen out this part right here. And we're going to add another loop cut to the bottom here so our foot looks flat. I'm going to go back to face select mode up here, and then I'm going to select these two faces by selecting and holding Shift, and I'm going to press S and X to kind of scale it in because I think that looks a little cuter. And now just match the whole thing with the body here. I can see that they're a bit too wide, so I'm going to press S and Shift Z, which will scale on the X and Y at the same time. So S, Shift Z, will scale it like this. Once you have it like that, pretty much done, we're just going to take this top edge right here and press G and Z to move it down a bit, just like that. And the same way, we're going to add arms. So I'm going to go into the edit mode on the legs. I'm going to press Shift A to add a cube, S to scale, G and Z to move it up, G and X to move it to the side. And then I'm going to press S and X to get a nice length of the arms here. And what I'm going to do is add another loop cut here so we get that cone shape again. Now, if you press A, you'll see that you select all the objects. If you want to select a specific object, you can hover over an object and press L. And then you can maybe press S, Shift X to scale on the Z and the Y to get a different length or width like this. And just match it to the reference view. So I need to SX a bit and move it back a tad bit, just like that. In order to add the hands, we could just add another cube like this, but I'm going to select this face right here, press Shift S, and then cursor to selected. And it will add the 3D cursor here. So now once we add another cube, it will add it to that point. And now if we just scale and G and X to move it out a bit, now we've got our hands. And then Shift C will reset the 3D cursor to wherever it was, back to the origin. And if you get lost and it's a bit too fast for you to the movement, what you can do is press Shift C to reset it and then go to View, Align View, and Center View to Cursor. I have placed this shortcut on a different key on my mouse, so now I can just use that. So if I ever get lost like this and need to go back, I can just press that button and come back here with nice little speed. And my hand is a bit too small, so I'm going to go into edit mode, select it again with L and hovering over it, and I'm going to press S and then just match it to this cube right here, or sorry, this sphere right here. Right, last thing to add is the eyes, as you can see. So I'm going to go into object mode, and again, if you lost your 3D cursor, press Shift C to put it back, Shift A, Mesh, Circle to add it. And before you do anything else, you can go down here and change the vertex count here. I'm going to go for 24, and then I'm going to go into edit mode. And if you go into vertex select mode, you can see there's 24 vertices. I'm going to press RX90 to rotate it like this, S to scale it, G and Z to move it up, G and Y to move it forward, and I'm gonna also add a mirror modifier. So now if I move it on the x-axis, you can see that it's mirrored. And now just match it to the model here. And in order to add faces to this, because this is currently just vertices and it's transparent, you can either do F, but this is not good geometry, and game engines usually don't like this. So what I usually do is press E to extrude, right click to put it back, M to merge at center, and now we get these triangles which work better with game engines. Press A to select everything, E, and then just move it back so we get this nice little thing. Select everything and just move it a tad bit back so it's not clipping through the object, but it's still on it. Last thing to do with the model is that our object is kind of flat or low poly, while this one is smooth. So in order to fix that, we're going to press A to select everything, W, and then shade smooth. You can go back to shade flat using W always. And now we've got a smooth object and a character. One more thing, if you look at the side reference, you can see that our arm is a bit forward. And usually I think arms should be a bit more back because, well, that's the way arms work. So I'm going to select everything with L here and hovering over, and G and Y just to move it a tad bit back and match it with the reference image. Just like that. And now you've got your character. Model. Nothing else. Just a model. At this point, I would recommend you save this by going Control S. Save Blender file, just so it doesn't get lost. Once we have this, we can select our reference images and then press X and delete. We don't need them anymore, and now we've just got our little dude here. But currently it is in 3 separate objects and we want to join it all together so it's one mesh. In order to do that, we'll go to each object and we will apply our mirror modifier. You can do that by clicking this arrow and pressing apply, or you can just hover over it and press Ctrl A to apply it. And now it's mirrored, and you can see you can edit them separately now. We're gonna do the same thing for the arms. We're gonna apply the mirror modifier and the subdivision, and same thing for the head and body, apply the subdivision surface. So now these are all separate objects, but they do not have any modifiers applied. In order to join them, I'm gonna press A and then Ctrl J to join them. And now you can see that this is all one object and our character is looking nice and clean. Now we can name it. I usually name it mesh and then the name of the object so I don't get lost when in it. Mesh character, just like this. To finish our base model, which we will later on use to create pretty much anything else we want, you can go ahead to the Materials tab to add color. Down here, this little sphere with checkers. And add a new material. I usually name my materials M and then the name of the material. So I'm gonna go M character. Just like this. And if you change the base color, you'll see nothing happens. That's because we're in solid view, and if you wanna go into material preview, just press Z and then drag down. And now we can change the color of our model. And I'm gonna go for a nice skin tone color, something like this. The hex code is B39582. To get it looking a bit better, I'm gonna turn off specular, and as you can see, it will remove some light from it. And I'm gonna set the roughness to 1, but this is up to you. I generally just use specular to 0, roughness to 1, and then just change the base color like this. In order to color the eyes a different way, we're gonna add another material using the add material slot button here. We're gonna create a new material, and this is gonna be M eyes. And if we change it to something like black, you'll see that nothing happens. That's because we have to assign this material to the eyes. So we're gonna go into edit mode. We're gonna press L to select the eyes. We're gonna select our eyes material and click assign. And you can now see that the eyes have their own color. And same thing as I did for the character material, I'm gonna decrease the speckle to 0, set the roughness to 1, and then the color of the eyes is 1D, 1D, 1D. If you now save, once again, just so it doesn't get lost, you now have a base character which can be converted into a knight, a soldier, a policewoman, a policeman, a doctor, well, whatever the fuck you want, really. Now, once we have the base model, we can start making, as I already said, any character you want. In order to do that, I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to save this file as Cute Knight, since I'll be making a knight. I think that's pretty generic, pretty simple, and looks pretty well. Of course, our knight's main kind of point of view will be its helmet. So let's make that. I will be adding these as separate objects. So Shift A, Mesh, Cube. And then in edit mode, I'll press S to scale, G and Z to move it up. And once again, I will add a subdivision surface modifier that will be set to 2 levels in the viewport. Now I can scale it so it's just above, so it's just bigger than the head. And I'll go back to solid view for this. So you can see where it kind of gets above the head. And to make the helmet, I will apply the subdivision. I will go into front view, Z, wireframe, and then I will just with C select this bottom part of it, and I will delete the faces by pressing X and then faces. So now we have this. And to make it cool, I will go into edge select mode and I will select this loop right here. So shift right click and just go around and select it. Make sure that it's the same on the both sides. And then E and Z to move it down, just like this. And for the center part, I'm gonna take these two and E and Z as well, just like this. And to scale them in a bit, what you can do is just select these two edges on the side, press S and X, and then G and Y to move it a bit forward. But you can see that it's really flat, or it's very simple, it's only one-sided. In order to fix that, we're gonna go add modifier, subdivision, or sorry, not subdivision surface, my bad. You wanna go to solidify. And then I will change the offset to 1. And this will change the side of the object. So we want it on the other side. So 1, and I will change the thickness to maybe 0.025 to get something like this. I'll take everything and just move it a tad bit up so it doesn't collide with the eye. And then select it, W, shade smooth. So now we've got our helmet. And if you want to make it extra cool, what you can do is press select these edges right here that we extruded down. We'll go into side view and then we'll press R to rotate and G and Z to move it up a bit so it has a bit of a lean to it. To make it even cooler, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into edit mode, and if you want to see your faces in here or what the modifier does, you can go to this little triangle here and then you'll be able to see what it does. We're gonna select these faces right here, these 4x2 faces. I'm gonna press E to extrude and just drag it out a bit, and this will give us that nice kind of thing that the helmets have. And to extrude it even more, I'm gonna press I to inset, just like this. You can see, inset it, left click, and we're gonna press extrude again. And later on we can color these different colors and it will look quite nice. So that's our helmet done. What I wanted to have is also some kind of gear right here on the arms. So what I'm gonna do is add another cube, tab to go into edit mode, S to scale, G and Z to move up, and GX to move it to the side, and we're gonna add a mirror modifier once again. I'm gonna press SZ to scale it on the Z axis, and then S to scale it to about the size of the arms, and then just move it to the center with G and Y like this. And then we can once again add a subdivision surface modifier, set it to 2, and then if you want, you can add 2 loop cuts like this. And press, but go into face select mode, select these 2 sides and press G and Z like this, and also set it to smooth with W, and then just place it exactly where you want it. So this is kind of the glove of the character. You can move it even down a bit, and S and Y to scale it a bit wider. Something like this. Now I would like some maybe pauldron or shoulders. So I'm gonna actually go into here, Shift D to duplicate this, G and X to move it here, S to scale, G and Z to move it up a bit, and now we've got some shoulders as well. For the boots, we're actually gonna go into our model right here, and what I'm gonna do is select this loop by holding Alt and Shift, and then you can select this loop like this, or you could select a different one, but if you do, just deselect everything and select these like that. I'm gonna go E to extrude and then Alt S to kind of scale it outwards. So these are going to be our boots. And we probably also want a belt, so the same way we did this, I'm going to go into my model, Alt to select this, E to extrude, right click to put it back, and then Alt S will bring it out like this. So this could be our belt. And for the belt buckle, what I will do is I will select these two vertices, Shift S, and then cursor to selected. I'm going to add Shift A cube, and then I'm just going to scale it down a bit, and S and Y to scale it on the Y axis, and just move it like this. So this can be our belt buckle. So if you now shade smooth, we have that as well. And just to give some more detail to the body, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these parts around the neck, right, like this. And I'm going to press E to extrude, and then G and Z to move it up, and S to scale it outwards a bit. So just so we have a little bit more detail on it. And once we have it, we should also now color it, because this looks awful. So I'm going to select this hand and pauldron part, and I'm going to add a new material, which is going to be M Armor. I'm going to set the specular to 0, roughness to 1, and I can change the color to a nice gray color. I'm going to apply that same material to my helmet, and I'm also going to add another material to my body, which is armor. And now we can select the boots here, and then just in wireframe mode, deselect this part, which should be the leg, and we're going to add the M armor to it. So now our boots have that. Our belt buckle should probably also have it, so just by L, we're going to assign the armor like this. We're going to actually take the whole body instead of this belt, so just Alt Shift right clicking, we'll select and deselect this loop, and we also want to deselect these 6 faces in here, or there should be 6, like that and like that. And then armor assign. So now we have armor here as well. And we probably want armor on our sleeves. So I'm going to select these and armor assign, just like that. Now we would probably also need some kind of a leather color. So I'm going to add another material. This is going to be M leather. Specular to 0, roughness to 1. We're going to go to base color, and we're going to add a nice brown material, and we're going to assign it to our belt. So select this by holding Alt and Shift, M leather, assign, just like that. But this is still a bit too pale, and I would like maybe a darker color of the gray. So I'm gonna add another material. I'm gonna go to armor here, and then I'm gonna click this little page icon here, which is gonna duplicate it, and this is gonna be armor dark. And I'm just gonna change the color to a bit darker. And then we can select our boots, for example. Again, Alt Shift to select, and we can now set that to a darker color, and probably our belt buckle as well to the dark one. Maybe we can even make it a bit darker. And the hex is, as you can see, 636363. I'll probably just make the sleeves the darker color as well. I think that looks a lot nicer. And now on our helmet, we can select again by using Alt this part by holding Alt and Shift, and then let's also add the M armor dark. And I would like a nice red color on the top here, so I'm going to add another material. This is going to be M red, and I'm going to take a nice red color, specular to 0, roughness to 1. I'm going to select this by holding Alt and then using the C tool, just select that, M red, assign, just like that. To again join all of this into its own object, I'm going to take this part, I'm going to go into modifiers, I'm going to apply the mirror, and I'm going to apply the subdivision, and I'm going to do the same thing for the helmet with the solidify modifier. Select them like this, and then lastly select the body and press Ctrl J. And now we can rename this to Mesh Night. Once we have our character, we of course have to get it rigged. And rigging, or a skeleton, or a armature is what you can use to animate the character. So basically we're going to add some bones, and then we're going to control those bones and move the character. I'm going to press Shift C to put this back, and I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh armature, or sorry, not mesh armature, armature and then sigil bone, just like this. And if you can't see it, you should go to this object data properties and then viewport display, and then in front while you have the armature selected. If you enter tab to go into edit mode, now you can change this bone. So first bone is the body bone. We're gonna go super simple with this. So I'm just gonna select it, press G and Z to move it up, and then just place it so it's where the body is using G and then the axis is. Now I'm gonna select this top part of the bone, press E and Z to extrude it. This is going to be our head bone. To add a arms bone, you can just make sure that you press Shift C to move the 3D cursor back, press Shift A to add another bone whilst in edit mode. And now I can just move it to wherever the arm starts, select this top part and press RY90. So we make sure it's straight. Press G and X to move it back where the arm is, and just move these points until you're happy. Once you have this, you can press E and X to extrude it to have the hand bone. And same thing for the legs. Shift A, I'm gonna move this to where the leg should start. And now I can press Alt F to flip the bone, GZ to move it down, and just make sure you place this correctly. If you go into side view, you can get another bone. So E and Y, this will be our foot bone. And just to show you in pose mode, so if you hold Control Tab, or just up here change to pose mode, you can see that if we move our body, our hands and legs don't follow, which is kind of weird. So in edit mode, you can select this arm bone, this leg bone, and then the body, Control P and keep offset. And now you can see that this will follow. So we basically parented these bones to the body. There's one more bone that we're gonna add, and it's gonna be Shift A to add it, select the top part and press RX90. And G and Y, this is going to be our master or root bone. And because this bone is only acts as a parent, we don't want it to actually deform any of the mesh. You can go down to this bone tab and uncheck deform for that bone. This just makes sure that this doesn't control any part of the mesh. Okay, but now we have one side of the armature. How do we copy it to the other side? Well, first we gotta name our bones. So I'm gonna select this one, and you can, I'll just expand this so you guys can see. So this bone, if you press F2 or just double click here, you can change the name. This is gonna be our body. This is going to be our head. This is going to be our leg, .L. Make sure you put the .L here. And this is going to be our foot, .L. This is going to be our arm.L, and this is going to be our hand.L. Once we have all the bones named, actually this bone we still didn't name, this is our root bone. And before we do anything else, this bone should control everything else. So I'm going to take the body bone and then select the root bone, Control P and keep offset. And now this can do its own thing, but if I use this, it moves everything. So back in edit mode, what you can do is press A to select everything, W, and then symmetrize. And it should flip the bones if you name them correctly. So now we have our rig. And to actually move the character with the rig, let's first rename this to rig knight. I'm gonna select the knight, then I'm gonna shift click, select the armature, Control P, and I'm gonna do with empty groups. Usually you would do with automatic weights, but I'm gonna show you why we're doing empty groups. Basically what groups are, under if you select the object and then go to the vertex tab here, or vertex data, object data, whatever it is, vertex groups tell the rig what part of the mesh they should control. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna go into our mesh, and then we're gonna select everything that we want to be parented to the head by using L. So the eyes, the helmet, and the head. We're gonna go to the head and we're gonna click assign. And now if you go into pose mode, you can see that the head follows that bone. And to visualize this, this is the weights of that bone. So blue means that it will not affect that part of the mesh. Red means it will affect it. So this is very simple, very easy weight painting. Okay, Now let's do the same thing for the body. In edit mode, I'll just select the whole body and the shoulders here. Go to body, assign. For the left arm, I'm gonna select this part of the mesh, so just the arm, arm.l, assign. For the hand, I'm gonna select the hand and this bit of armor, hand.l, assign. For the leg, I'm gonna select the whole leg and just parent it to the leg.l. Now, a quite easy way, because obviously we can't select just one part of the foot and make it, you know, give the foot that control. A really easy way, because they're connected, is to select this part of the mesh, select the armature, select the mesh, go into weight paint, press M, and then go to this vertex selection, and you'll see that only this part of the leg is highlighted. And what you can do is say weights, assign automatic from bones. And now you can see that the foot bone affects this part and the leg affects everything else. So that's a really easy way to do that. So we're going to do the same thing for the other side. We're going to go ahead and assign all of this to the leg.r. Then we're going to select this foot bone. We're going to select this foot on the model, select the rig, select the mesh, go into weight paint, M to go into this mask view, go to vertex, weights, assign automatic from weights. And you can see that we should have pretty much the same results on the both feet. Pretty simple. Now we just got to do the arm. So arm.r is this, and then the hand.r is this. And if you now go into pose mode and using the same shortcuts, you can see that we can animate our little guy. And this bone doesn't deform anything, so it just stays. And I forgot to parent the belt buckle to the body. So just select the belt buckle, body, assign. And now everything should move. So now you have successfully rigged a character. Once you have your model and your rig and your colors, we can finally animate it. And this should be the last step. So if you go over to the animation tab right here, I like to change this view to nonlinear animation here. I like to change from dope sheet to action editor so we can make actions or separate animations. I changed the end frame here to 59 and the start frame to 0, because usually animations have 60 frames and you don't want the last one to be the same as the first one, because then it doesn't blend well. Just set it to 0 and 59. And also, since most of the time you probably want 60 frames per second, you can go to this output properties and then change it to 60. And now 1 second is 60 frames. If you press space, you will be able to see the animation playing. But currently we don't have anything. And I'm just gonna zoom in here just so we have a nice little view. To create a new animation, select the rig, go into pose mode, and click new. I like to name my animations A and then what the animation is, and this is going to be idle. And I like to click this little shield icon. This makes it so if for some reason the rig is not using it, Blender doesn't delete it, because if you don't, Blender might delete it. Just click the shield icon, trust me, it's going to save you a lot of pain. Alright, so for the idle animation, what we're going to do is we're going to take this arm, press RY to rotate it down, and G and X to move it a bit out, and then RY again. Now, if you want the same exact result on the other side, you can press Ctrl C and then Ctrl Shift V to paste it to the other side. Press A to select everything, because we have to key some bones. Go to frame 0, because that's where we start. And if you press I, you can insert a keyframe. And I want to insert the keyframe with the data of the location, rotation, and scale of each bone. And now you can see we have these keyframes. What keyframes do is basically if I move this arm some different position on frame 10, press I, apply the location, rotation, and scale, you can see that it will lerp between them. So we have to animate a whole cycle or whatever we want. If you don't want to press I and then location, rotation, scale each time, you can go down here to keying and then active keying set to location, rotation, and scale. And if you just press I now, it will automatically do location, rotation, and scale. For the idle animation, it's actually pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the last frame as well, to frame 60, and press I, location, rotation, and scale. And now we have this basic pose in. And then on frame 30, what I'm going to do is just rotate the head a bit down and press I. So RX, rotate it down and press I. And now if you press space, you can see that there's a little breathing animation. Usually for idle animations, I actually like to go like for 120 frames. So I'm going to set the end frame to 119 and I'm going to select everything and move these keyframes by right clicking and then moving it to 120 and move this middle one to 60. So now we have this little animation. What I also want to do at frame 60 is maybe move the arms a bit down. So I'm going to rotate this arm on the y-axis a bit, copy, Ctrl-Shift-V, select these two bones and press I. So now we have this little animation playing. Once you're done with your idle animation, what I'm going to do is select everything on this first frame, press copy to copy that pose, and then I'm going to push this animation to the stack right here. This will help us once we start exporting them. And I'm going to create a new animation, which is going to be called a walk forward. And I'm going to click the shield icon and change the end frame to 59 because I usually go for 60 frames on a walk cycle. In a walk cycle, it's actually pretty simple. You want opposite arms and leg, or opposite arm and leg, to go forward and then the other side to go back. So I'm going to take the right leg and I'm going to rotate it around the x-axis forward. I'm going to do the same thing for the arm. I'm going to rotate it forward, and on the opposite side this one is going to go back and this one is also going to go back. Select everything and press I. And then I'm going to do the same thing on frame 60 because first and last frame should be the same. And then in the middle, what I'm going to do is press Ctrl-C to copy, Ctrl-Shift-V to paste, and press I. And now if you play it, you can see that we have a little walking animation. What we are missing is some middle frames. So on frame 15, I'm going to go to the leg that was going forward, which is the right leg. I'm going to select it and I'm going to press Alt-G and Alt-R to reset the rotation and the transform. And then I'm going to press I. I'm going to do the same thing for the leg on the other side. On frame 45, Alt-R, Alt-G, press I. What we can do on frame 15 is for the forward arm, or for the arm that's going forward, we can just maybe move it a bit outside. So rotate around the y-axis, press I, copy, Control-C, go to frame 45, Ctrl-Shift-V, select the other arm and press I. So now they have this little kind of arch whenever we move forward. Another thing for the leg, since we have toes, is whenever the leg is up on the first frame, we can rotate it just a tad bit up and press I. Copy it, paste it to the last frame, I, go to the middle, Ctrl-Shift-V, select the other leg, press this. It's a very subtle detail, but that's fine. And also what we can do is select the body bone, and whenever we're transitioning between steps, you can just move the body a bit up, copy, paste, I, and paste I. And then on frame 15 and 45, I'm just going to press Alt-G on the body bone and press I. So now we also have this little up and down motion. What we can also do on frame 15 is just to rotate the body a bit to the leg that's stepping down. So for example, it's the right leg here. So I want to rotate the body a bit to the right side and rotate the leg a bit outwards like that. Select them, press I, Ctrl-C to copy. On frame 45, Ctrl-Shift-V, select the body and the other leg and press I. So now we have a little bit of a lean. On those frames, I also like to straighten out the head, so you can see that the head is a bit tilted. So I'm just gonna rotate around Y to kind of make it straight. Press I, copy, and Ctrl-Shift-V, on 45 and press I. So now we have a little walking animation. And this is the walking forward animation. If we want a walking backwards animation, we can go ahead and duplicate this one, name it BW for backwards, click the shield icon, make sure that in the action stash you delete the one that was created when duplicating. And for the backward animation, I'm going to select all the keyframes in here, go to frame 0, SX-1 to scale it on the other side, and then G and X and move the first frame to 0. And now we have a walking animation that goes backwards. So that's pretty cool as well. So now we can go to our walk forward animation, push it down to the stack, go to our backwards animation and push it down to the stack. If you also need animation going side to side, you can take the walking forward animation, duplicate it once again, delete the one that was created in the stack here, and rename this to this one to left. I'll just name it left, it's fine. And what you can do is take this root bone and rotate it on the Z-axis for 90 degrees, press I, and then you're gonna have to do that on each frame. So you can just Control C to copy the root bone, and whenever you see that that bone was being used, so it should be 0, 30, and 60, just paste and I, and then paste and I as well. So now you got an animation going left. And what you can do is just gonna kind of take the head and rotate it a bit towards the front. So he's kind of looking forward but moving to the left. So I'm gonna press I, copy, I'm gonna paste it here, I, copy, paste, I, and paste I. So now your character is moving left. If you want the right animation, duplicate it, right, save it, delete the one from stack. And what we can do is go to each one of these 4 sections, take the pose, copy, Control Shift V, press I, copy, Control Shift V, I, copy, Control Shift V, I. And this one didn't really work because we copied the root bone. So we can just RZ -90 on the root bone, press I, and do the same thing here. Copy, Control Shift V, I, rotate around Z -90, I, and then A, copy, Control Shift V, I. And now we've got a left and right animation, so we can export them as well. So the left, push it down, and the right, push it down. This should be enough to get you started on a small game. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna use a Toon shader on my object, so I kind of make it look a little bit nicer. So if you go to shading, a really simple way of creating a Toon material, let's do the armor dark first, is to delete the, or you don't have to delete it yet, just unplug it. Let's add a diffuse BSDF. You can do that by Shift A and then searching. A diffuse BSDF, and then we take a color ramp and then plug that color ramp into our surface right here. And it's pink now because we can't go from a BSDF to a color ramp. So we'll add a shader to RGB node and place it in between like this. And you can see now if you change this ramp here, you'll see the shading change as well. If we want Toon shading, we can go to constant right here. And you'll see that if we move the other one, we get a nice little flat shader going, just like that. And then if you want to change the color, we're going to add a mix RGB node. I think it's called mix color in the newest version. Plug that in, and to select the other color, we're going to go here, take this little eyedropper and select the color from our previous thing. And we also want to multiply and not mix. Actually, we're going to copy the hex code and just swap these two. So the color ramp is in the bottom one and this one is on the top. And now we got a colored little soldier thingy. And you can change the intensity of the shadows by changing the color of the ramp node. So I'm just going to go something like this maybe. And if you want to quickly change this on all the materials, what you can do is just select this by clicking and dragging, copy, and then just go to each material, paste this, and of course change the color using the eyedropper here. So now we've got our armor as well. And if you want to just select them differently, you can just do that here in the material properties. So paste, let's select the correct color. And actually, you should be changing the factor to 1 as well, so it blends correctly. Factor to 1, factor to 1 for the leather as well. Just paste this, and let's select that correct color, and factor to 1. Factor to 1, and on the red one, which should be the last one, just set this here. And now we've got a little Toon soldier or a Toon knight going for a walk. If you want to check out the other animations, select the rig, and you can change to maybe walk forward. Or let's just set it to idle. But that should be 1:19, as we already said before. And now you've got a little Toon soldier, which should be pretty fun to make some little projects with if you've never done this before. If you want to use this in an engine, let me show you. So if you're going to use this in Unity, you can select the rig and then, or well, everything. And since Unity uses a different transform system, you will have to select everything, press Shift-C, and make sure that the origin is in the center. So W, set origin to 3D cursor. If your origin is somewhere else, Shift-C, set origin, 3D cursor. RX -90 to rotate it backwards, Control-A, and apply all transforms. And then RX 90 to bring it back. This will be only for Unity. So you can go File, Export, FBX. Find where you're going to save it, name it, go here to only selected objects. Select the armature, shift-click the mesh, so it only exports the armature and the mesh. Apply scaling for the FBX unit scale. This will make sure that the scale stays 1:1 and not 100:100. Go down to armature, disable add leaf bones, and in the bake animations, make sure you uncheck all actions. And this will only export the ones that we pushed to the stack whenever we were making them. And then just export FBX. You can drag and drop this into Unity and it should work. If you want to use it in Godot, you don't have to do the part of the Unity to change the rotation to 90, so you can just set it where it is, Control-A, all transforms, and then File, Export, and then GLB, or GLTF here, change it to GLB, add the setting to selected objects. I don't like exporting the material with it, so in materials I go no export, and then just export that GLB wherever you actually saved it. So Cute Knight GLB and export it. If you drag and drop this GLB into Godot, right click, make inherited scene, and you will have your animations and your model set up in a scene. You can find all the resource files on the links in the description, and pretty much just download the Knight if you want to use it for some fucking reason.